Good evening. Hey, it's great to be with you. Great to be with you here at Cokesbury. Great to be with all our satellite locations. And my name's Will. I'm a believer and follower of Jesus Christ. I struggle with codependency and a lot of other stuff. I'm really glad to be here with you tonight. I want to say a special hello to my good friends and heroes up in Lebanon, Virginia. That's a very special place, and I especially want to say something to the newcomers there in Lebanon, and really who don't know me, and really the newcomers in any one of these rooms. These are special rooms, and there's a lot of people who gave a lot so that these rooms could be here. And there's a lot of people who didn't believe that you could have a place like this, and didn't believe that things like this could happen. And there's some of you here tonight who you're not sure that some of the stuff we've been talking about can happen in your life. But there are folks sitting beside you who've seen it happen, and they're ready to see it happen again. Now, one of the ways we see it happen is as we get in touch with the Serenity Prayer. This prayer is a big deal to us, and we want to say the whole prayer tonight. We normally say it at the end. We're going to do that, but we're going to go ahead and say it now, and then we're going to work through it and see what it says and see why this has been so important to so many of us. You know, last week, Alex gave a great message about, when you're clean but not sober, and that really what we're going for is sobriety, that correct thinking, correct believing, correct living, that life of peace, serenity, and joy. And those who found that generally tell you that this prayer has an awful lot to do with it. So I think we've got it up. What we want to do is go ahead and will you say this with me? God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardships as the pathway to peace, taking as Jesus did this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that He will make all things right if I surrender to His will, that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with Him in the next. Amen. Amen. All right, so let's talk through that. Let's see if that's really a prayer that you should be clapping about tonight. Because I put it up on Facebook this week. I said, I'm going to be speaking at Recovery at Cokesbury. I'm so excited about it. We're going to be talking about finding peace through the Serenity Prayer. And one of the first comments I had was, I don't like that prayer. And I was like, you know what? Good, that means you read it. That means you read it. Because I think if you really read it your first time through, you may not like it. In fact, if you read what most people read of it, the first little bit, and you don't read the second verse and the third verse, you probably won't like it too much. Because, it's if you just have that first verse, it sounds real good. It's just impossible to do. This, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change and the courage to change the things I can. Well, of course. Of course. Who doesn't want that? I mean, everybody wants that. And the wisdom to know the difference. Well, that sounds great. How do you find the wisdom? Where does that wisdom come from? You've got folks around you today who have some of that wisdom. And we're going to dig into the second and the third verse tonight, and we're going to talk about where some of that wisdom comes from, because that first half just doesn't make any sense unless you have the second half to go with it. And that very first bit can just grate on you. Accept the things I cannot change. Like, we don't like that, do we? We just went through a couple weeks ago here, we went through Super Tuesday, right? And we all stood in line to vote and everything. What if you had a presidential candidate get up there and go, when they ask him, how are you going to fix this? And they said, well, I'm going to accept the things I can't change. They would slam that person. That person would get slammed, except those of us in recovery. We'd be like, that guy might be sober. He might actually be sober. We're a society, we love superheroes. Like, we're big on superheroes. And we go to movies to watch superheroes fight superheroes. That's how much we like superheroes, because we like this idea that we can change anything, that we have this special power that we can change anything, that if you try hard enough, you can just change anything. And the fact is, there are things that we're never going to get sober, we're never going to get peace-filled, we're never going to be joyful if we don't accept some things. And so we have to. In fact, we must accept what we can't change. This is what the AA Big Book says about acceptance. And let me tell you, if you like this one the first time through, you probably haven't read it. Okay, Big Book, page 417. Acceptance is the answer to all my problems today. When I'm disturbed, it is because I find some person, place, thing, or situation, some fact of life unacceptable to me. And I can find no serenity until I accept that person, place, thing, or situation as being exactly the way it is supposed to be at this moment. Unless I accept life on life's terms, I cannot be happy. I need to concentrate not so much on what needs to be changed in the world as what needs to be changed in me and my attitudes. Now, is that not step one? Right? Realize that I was powerless over my compulsive behaviors, over my addictions, and that my life had become unmanageable. I have to accept that I don't have a power within me. I don't have a superpower that allows me to white knuckle it, that allows me to say, I'm just going to change. I'm just going to decide that this time is it. I'm just going to figure it out. But there's a superpower beyond ourselves that can do that. There's a superpower beyond ourselves that wants to do that. But we can't access that superpower until we give up on saying that I can do this myself. And the scriptures talk about this. In 2 Corinthians, there was this guy, and his name was Paul, and he prayed a ton, and he kept saying, God, I need you to move these mountains. I need you to do this, just like we just sang about what happens when you pray for God to move a mountain and God doesn't move it. And he was praying one of these prayers, and he prayed and he prayed and he prayed, and then this is what God said to him. God said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in your weakness. My power is made perfect in your weakness. When we accept what we can't change, then all of a sudden we have this access to God's power. And here's one of the things that we've got to accept. This is a real hard thing to accept. I must accept hardships as the pathway to peace. I must accept hardships as the pathway to peace. Now, that's what the Serenity Prayer tells us is the pathway to peace. That's what life tells us is the pathway to peace. That's not where we want to find peace, right? That's just not it for us. We want everything to go well. We think once we start doing just a little bit right, that all of a sudden everything else should go well. The only place you find peace? Hardship. Hardship. You have to have gone through it. That's just it. If you're struggling with something tonight, man, you don't want to walk into a room after this service. You don't want to go into one of these rooms around here, and you don't want to talk to somebody who's never been through that, who's all peaceful. You want to talk to somebody who's been through that. You really want to talk to somebody who's been through worse than that. And you want to know that there's peace on the other side. And this is just how life works. And for some of us, we literally hit rock bottom. Everything literally in our lives fell apart. But really for all of us, for anybody, whether you've struggled with addiction, whether you've struggled with compulsive behavior, at some point you have to realize that you running your own life is unmanageable, that it's not leading where you want to go. And at some point you have to realize that everything kind of is falling apart. And then that's when you find that pathway to peace, when you accept that you can't do it, when you accept that somebody else has to do it for you, that you need wisdom beyond your own for that journey. That's what you need. And Jesus talked about this too. He talks about it in John 16:33. He says this to his disciples. This is right before he's going to be crucified. He says this, I've told you these things so that you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. Take heart, I have overcome the world. He's saying, this is step 2. Yeah, you're going to have trouble here, but I've overcome it. Trust that there's a power beyond myself who can do these things. And then I turn my life and my will over to that power. That's what he's telling us. There's not anywhere in this life a pathway to peace other than struggle. Because when you go through those hardships and you come out on the other side, suddenly you don't have to live in fear of those hardships anymore. When you've lost everything and you found out that God's caught you, when you hit rock bottom and you realized at rock bottom, you know what there is? A rock. There's a rock at rock bottom, and isn't that good news? You get there, and then you realize that you don't have to be scared of what this life holds, but because you found the pathway to peace. And some of you just can't believe that this could possibly be the case. You say, that's not it. I look at these other people and their life's just great. And that has to be the pathway to peace because everything's going right to them. You're not looking at them. You're looking at what they put on Instagram. I mean, we all only put stuff that looks great on Instagram. If you're putting stuff that doesn't look great up there on the internet for everybody to see, then we got bigger issues. And we can work with those too, but we look at what other people put up and we're like, oh, that must be working great for them. Well, anybody can have good looking pictures, but in these rooms, we get down to what's really going on and what's really real and where peace is really found. So when we go through these hard times, we don't say, oh my goodness, this was never supposed to happen. Because Jesus told us, he said, expect trouble. In this world, you're going to have trouble. It's going to be tough. And I know one tough thing tonight for y'all, and, let's just be honest about this. It's kind of hard being 2 weeks without Mark Beebe, isn't it? Like, that's just kind of tough. So I cared about y'all tonight. So I went and I told some people I want a Mark Beebe shirt. So I got a Mark Beebe shirt. But as you can see, they gave me a Mark Beebe size. So it's it could kind of be a dress for me. But I also, just because I care about you so much, I've been working to learn a foreign language, and I call it Beebish. And so some of you know how to speak Beebish. So I just want to share with you this little truth about hardships being the pathway to peace in Beebish. And the way you'd say it in Beebish is, because that's the way it works, slick. So it's good to laugh about hardships, isn't it? It's good to laugh about hardships because what you get into, when you get into accepting those hardships, is you realize that you have to come to this point where within the middle of those hardships, where you have the courage to change the things I can. The courage to change the things I can. And you have to find out where that comes from. And you learn what you can actually change. You learn that you can't change all those external situations. And you learn that you can't change other people. And that's one of the hardest and awesomest things you can ever learn. Because you know what happens the moment you stop thinking you can change somebody else? You stop being so judgmental. You stop being such a hypocrite. Because what you realize is, how in the world can I change somebody else? I can't hardly change myself. And the only thing I can change is my perspective and my prerogative. I can change where I look for strength. And I can trust that he will make all things right. And that's where that change comes from. And that's hard for us because, this goes back to the very beginning, that whole bit about acknowledging what I can't change. We really don't like that, except once you do it, it's the best thing ever. but it sounds like the worst thing ever. It's kind of like some of us may have grown up in alcoholic homes, or homes where there was addiction, or homes where there was abuse. And if you've grown up in one of those homes, what you know is that you didn't experience childhood the way a lot of others experience childhood. Like, I've been through, driving through neighborhoods this week, and it's so awesome this week with the sun out. You drive through neighborhoods, and there's kids playing basketball, and there's kids jumping on trampolines, and they're riding bikes, and they're running around through the yard with big sticks that they're pretending, to be guns. And it's just weird, the way every kid just kind of magically knows that a stick is supposed to be a gun. Like, isn't that an interesting thing? At church last night, I had a little, 4-year-old beautiful girl come up to me, and she'd found this big stick, and she's like, pow, 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 shooting me with it. I'm like, why are you shooting me with it? She said, because I'm a stormtrooper. Of course you are. Of course you are. You're a little kid. You found a stick. That's what you do. And when you see kids playing like that, you just see this exuberance. You just see this sheer joy. They're just not worried about anything. Kids are supposed to be exuberant. But kids who grow up with addiction and abuse and in a home they can't trust, they don't always have that same exuberance, right? Because they're thinking, when I get home, how am I going to keep mom and dad from fighting tonight? They're thinking, when I get home, what am I going to find that I can eat? Because they're not going to fix something for me. They're thinking, how can I make sure my little brother gets a bath tonight? They're worried about all kinds of stuff they're not supposed to be worried about yet. If you have never gotten to the point where you can accept that there's a lot of stuff that you're not even supposed to be responsible for, and you can accept responsibility for the stuff you can actually change, that's when you really understand that you're a child of God. And that's when you can really have that joy and that exuberance that comes with being a child of God, that comes with knowing that your daddy's a good daddy, and your daddy's going to take care of you. And he's not going to let you go. He's going to hold you in his hand. He's not about to let you go because he's got the whole world in his hand. And that's the kind of family you're a part of. But until you get to that point where you can trust he will make all things right, you're a child, but you're living like you have to be an adult because that's how you think the world works. But it doesn't have to work that way. You have to trust that he will make all things right. But that's the trick, man. That is the trick in the Serenity Prayer. That is the key that unlocks it, that makes everything else make sense, that makes everything else work. Trust. Because a lot of us, we really don't know what it is to trust. We think we do, but we don't. Because, if you're going through something tough tonight, you need somebody who's been there, and you need for them to share with you some wisdom that's gonna get you through that. But you don't know where to find that wisdom, because when they share it, you don't like it, so you walk out of the room. Right? And what you've got to trust is that they've been there, and that not just have they figured it out, but that they're connected to the God who's powerful over it. And that God has shared wisdom with them that they can share with you. Because here's the deal. It's not trusting someone until you disagree with them. Right? When people tell you what you want to hear, when it all makes sense to you, you're not trusting them. They're just encouraging you. When you trust somebody is when they tell you something that you don't agree with, that you didn't necessarily think would work, and you go ahead and walk that path anyways. That's when you actually trust. So I want to ask you tonight, how many of you have ever trusted God? How many of you have ever trusted a group conscience? Or do you go and you take the stuff that you already agree with, and the other stuff just let it go? Have you trusted? Have you really trusted? Because some of this recovery stuff, you just don't figure it out on your own. I mean, do you know how many years and how much it took for us to get the 12 and 12 and the big book and the 12 steps? Do you know how many people went into that? It's not just like it magically happens. There's some stuff you can't figure out. I'm a runner. And, when I got into running, at first, here's what I was doing. I was going, and 3 days a week, I'd run real hard. And then my legs would be tired, so I'd take a day off. And then I'd go run again. And that's what I did. And for a while, I got better at running. And then all of a sudden, I wasn't getting better, and I was sore all the time. And so I talked to like a guy who's like a real deal runner and a running coach. And I said, this is happening. What's going on? And I said, I'm sore all the time. I'm not really getting better. I think I'm training too hard. I think I need to take some time off. He's like, no, you know why you're sore? And you know why you're not doing good is because, and the reason why you can't recover from those hard workouts? You're not running enough. Really? Really? He said, yeah. He said, the way you recover from a hard running workout is with an easy run. It's not by not running. So the day after you do a hard run, the next day you do an easy run. If you get nothing else out of this tonight, if you don't even believe in God, that's true. You go try it. Yeah, I promise you, that's true. The way you recover is with an easy run, not by resting. So I tried it, and it didn't make sense to me. But I tried it because I trusted. That's all we're asking you to do tonight. Even if you can't yet trust God, trust the people who've walked this path before you. They've learned to trust God, and then maybe eventually you'll get to that point where you can trust God, where that can, really be real to you, and you can see it really does happen. Like, you really can get to that point where you realize that your life is unmanageable, that it's out of control. You can get to that point, and you can realize there's so much peace there. It's not hell, it's heaven. I promise you it's not hell. I was talking to a guy tonight, and he told me years and years ago now, he checked into a rehab, and he said, my life had literally fallen apart. He said, and when I walked in that door, I felt peaceful and as happy as I could be. Because he said they didn't have to convince him he'd hit bottom, he'd realized it. And when he realized it, all of a sudden there was a lot of peace. All of a sudden. And if you're going to get there, get to this place of trust, get to this place where you realize you have to turn your life and will over to this higher power who we call Jesus, who can make all things right. When you get to that place of sobriety, there's something you need to realize when you get there, and that's this: I must have realistic expectations. I must have realistic expectations. The Serenity Prayer is full of realistic expectations. The Big Book talks about expectations, and it tells us this on page 420. Perhaps the best thing of all for me is to remember that my serenity is inversely proportional to my expectations. The higher my expectations are, the lower my serenity. Now, the Serenity Prayer puts it this way when it talks about expectations: that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with Him in the next. Sometimes you get in this deal called recovery, and you start coming down off that pink cloud. And you start thinking, you know what? After a couple months, everything should be pretty good. Like, I felt so good. I felt so peaceful working step one, working step two. And now, shoot, I've got 4 months sober. My life should be set. Let me tell you something. Sometimes there are people who never deal with addiction and compulsive behavior, and their lives fall apart. Just because you get sober doesn't mean it's all going to be easy. And we think, I've done all this, or you get 5 years, or you get 10 years. You learn how not to behave in a codependent way. You learn how not to enable. You learn how to make space for yourself. You learn how to get, to be eating what you need to eat. You learn how to look past those things that have happened to you and to deal with them and not let them run your life. You learn how to forgive. You learn that, forgiving doesn't make the other person right, it makes you free. It doesn't make the other person right, it makes you free. And you learn all these things that are so hard, and you start applying them, and then several years down the road, all of a sudden you realize, well, I thought I'd be a lot happier. Well, I thought things would be I thought I'd have a lot more money by now. I thought my family would be going a lot better. And what's happening is you're beginning to lose your sobriety. Or at least you have an opportunity. The enemy's giving you an opportunity to walk back down that crazy path that you thought you'd given up with long ago because your expectations are getting out of control. Reasonably happy in this life, supremely happy in the next. And let me tell you, when that starts happening, because that starts happening to me sometimes. Sometimes I start finding that, you know what? Everything in life externally, I can't point to anything. Like everything's all right, but I just thought I'd be happier. I just thought it would feel better. And when that happens, you know what's normally happening? Is my 11th step is sliding. That sought through prayer and meditation to daily improve my conscious contact with God. Because you got to keep your eyes on him. Because he really is where the happiness comes from. And he really does say, you're going to be reasonably happy in this life. You're going to be passionate. You're going to be joyful. You're going to have serenity. But there's going to be hard times, right? And it's going to be tough, and you're not always going to be able to see me. And there are going to be times when you pray for stuff, and it's not going to happen, and you're going to have to work through that, but supremely happy with him in the next. And when you keep your eyes on him, man, you can walk through a lot with serenity and with peace. And when you take your eyes off of him, you can't walk through much at all. I mean, you really just can't walk through much at all. So here's the thing. I want to invite you tonight to trust. I want you to invite you tonight to trust that he's working, that he can make you reasonably happy in this life, have peace and serenity. And I want that expectation to be realistic, and that you know that even when you get there, even when you get to year 1 or year 2 or year 5 or year 10, a place you never thought tonight that you could get, that the only way to get more peace is still to go through hardships. That's still the only way to get more peace. So have those realistic expectations about this life, but also here's the other thing. I want you to have realistic expectations about the next life too. And I want you to know that being supremely happy, that's realistic. There's a God who can do that. That's for real. That's not just preacher talk. That's really for real. There's a God who can forgive you, like even you. And there's a God who can redeem and restore for the stuff that got and the people who got left in your wake. There's a God big enough to do all that and to make you, to lead you to a place where you're supremely happy and where all those hurts really have been healed. Like really have been healed. The picture of heaven, the Bible tells us in heaven that he will wipe away every tear, that there will be no more crying there, that all those hurts have been healed. Supremely happy to be able to love fully and to be fully loved. That stuff's for real. And in this life, we can have that assurance. Now, if you struggle with that's really realistic, then I want to tell you, there was this guy, he lived a long time ago, and he wrote a poem. And man, I mean, this dude lived a long time before the 12 steps were written down, but he got it. He got the kind of God we have, that we can trust he will make all things right. So I want to share with you a poem by a dead white European, okay? And I think this guy just gets it. Here's what he says. Depth of mercy can there be, mercy still reserved for me? Can my God his wrath forbear, me the chief of sinners spare? I have long withstood his grace, long provoked him to his face. We've done that, haven't we? Would not hearken to his calls, grieved him by 1,000 falls. There for me the Savior stands, shows his wounds and spreads his hands. God is love, I know, I feel. Jesus weeps and loves me still. God is love, I know, I feel. Jesus weeps and loves me still. Jesus has wept over you. And for some of you, Jesus has wept when you've been hurt, and he's wept when you've hurt others, and he's wept when you've turned from him. And tonight is the night to let those tears of sorrow that he's wept become tears of joy as you come back to him. Because he's here to weep over you tonight. And for some of us, it's time for us to come back and realize that we've been trying to follow him as best we could, but we've been letting our own power kick in, and we've been getting these unrealistic expectations. And it's time for us to come back and say, I want to be a child again. That bit he said about you can only come to me, you can only come to my kingdom if you come as a child, he meant that. And some of us got a few steps down the road and we got a big head and decided we were adults. But in this deal, we're always children. We're always children. It's time to come back. It's time to come back tonight. We're about to open up this altar. It's time to come back. Wherever you are, Jesus weeps and loves you still. Let him weep over you with joy tonight. This altar's open. This is your time.